Adam, thank you so much for having me
Elle,
over.
it's an absolute pleasure to be part of Coast Community News.
Yes, it is. It's so lovely to be here.
Wasn't sure if there was an A. I panicked for a second. I thought there was an AL on the end of Coast. I was going to go Coastal.
Oh, Coastal.
I was doing an event last night and I introduced a woman, Vanessa Hudson, who's the CFO at Qantas, amazing woman. I introduced her as Jennifer Hudson.
Oh, no.
The actress, because the other guy, the other person on the panel was the director of the Sydney Film Festival. Oh. And for some reason I had movies going around the back of my head. And I introduced Jennifer Hudson.
So how did you come back from that?
She just went, I think it's Vanessa, and I said, I think you're right. And we kept going from there.
And that was that.
The rest of the conversation went well.
So you're a media personality.
Oh, you bet I am.
A former radio presenter, comedian and a maths geek. If you could take me back in time, what came first, love for numbers or a love for making people laugh?
Well, I can remember how far back the love for numbers was. And that's way back. I don't ever remember not loving numbers. I've always enjoyed laughter, and I can remember a period in my time in my life before I think I was making other people laugh, when I was very jealous of people who were making other people laugh. And I was probably already in love with numbers at that stage. So I think the love of numbers came first. I can remember two brothers whose surname might be McDonald, I can't remember, at my primary school. And so the interesting thing I find with laughter is, as you grow older, you know, for young kids, as your mind starts to be able to take on deeper concepts, you appreciate deeper levels of comedy. And I can remember the first time you ever hear a joke or something of a different level of complexity or whatever, and you get it. I can remember the excitement of realising, wow, there's whole new levels or domains of things being funny. And I can remember these two brothers, and there was an ad on TV for a tomato sauce called Red Baron sauce, and the TV ad it had a sort of background vocal of just boom, 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 boom. Here comes the mighty Red Baron with a tasty new sauce. Kids will chew by the gallon with a name like Red Baron. Well, of course, bum, bum, bum. And these two brothers were in the playground at school singing it, and one brother was doing the boom, 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 and his older brother was singing, here comes the mighty Red Baron with a tasty new sauce. Kids will spew by the gallon. He was saying spew instead of chew. I can remember...
That was it.
Just laughing so hard. But also, it's the first time I'd ever heard anyone parody a song or a tune. So it just introduced me to the world of, well, that's another thing that could be really funny, wouldn't it? Just changing the words. Just wow. And and that's the thing I find that, and you know, and sometimes your comedic, you know, sensibilities can regress and you still find slapstick very funny or whatever. But that growing awareness that there's layers upon layers, which is the same on your mathematical journey, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. So that was the correlation there.
As you start to appreciate calculus and then group theory and things like that.
Of course.
But I think my love for numbers preceded my ability to make people laugh.
Yeah, wonderful.
And my desire to make people laugh certainly preceded my ability to make people laugh.
Ah, fascinating. Because you've had many successes academically and within the media. I'm curious to how you've continuously had the drive and ambition to push across varying fields. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's an interesting question. No one's ever asked me that question, Elle. Possibly a mixture of easily bored, and in a lot of the things that I started down the path of, I never really finished. So I didn't have any choice, but when I moved on to something new, to give it a red hot go, because I couldn't go back to. So I started a law degree at uni and left it after 3 years to pursue pure maths degree. So I couldn't go back to the law, so I had to give pure maths a bit of a go. But I hadn't done enough work on the pure maths up until then. I hadn't done the right subjects and worked hard enough in second year, third year. So I got halfway through the PhD and realised I don't think this is going to work out for me. And I won the comedy competition that got me into Triple J. So I had to sort of give that a go. And it was when I got breakfast on Triple J was probably the first time I actually felt I had a job of any sort and something that I could actually have a go at. And that ran its course and ran quite well. And you do have to have just a certain drive to do breakfast radio for more than the shortest period of time, because it's physically tough and the hours and all that. Yeah. And so I do alternate. I've got that slightly obsessive thing where if I do want to really have a crack at something, I tend to go all in on it, or I'm quite happy just to let things, I'm not interested. I'm not, of all the, in my life, the frustrations in my life tend not to come from failures where I've done as well as I can and it just didn't work out, but from when I've not really gone as hard as I could at something. So probably the greatest one of the greatest frustrations in my life, deep down, genuinely don't know if from the beginning of uni or the middle of high school or whatever, I'd gone as hard at maths as I could. Genuinely don't know whether I could have got a PhD in pure maths.
Yeah.
Now, with the lack of hard work at uni, where I was probably better at getting really good marks in certain subjects than deeply understanding them, and not picking the right range of subjects and not having the right tools in the toolkit to do the PhD, absolutely realised there was no way I was going to get one. Genuinely don't know if that's because I didn't do the preparation and didn't think about it early enough, or if I just didn't have the skills to do it. And I'm the sort of person who's more frustrated by that than by doing my very best at something, working out what my limitations are, and then going, okay, that's as well as you go there. I think there are some other people who might tend not to absolutely push something as hard as they can because they'd rather not know. Rather not be told what their limits and shortfalls are. I would always prefer to know, I think.
Yeah, because you've been very public about a health overcoming with your right eye. I was looking at that on Google. And is there any correlation? So, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a drooping in the right eye and you had an operation, received a transplant. Yes? Yeah,
so born with an eye that didn't open. Mum thinks that was from a forceps birth, and the way the forceps gripped on my head might have stopped the blood flow to the muscle. So barely opened at all. Didn't open at all at birth, I think. Series of operations to open it. And there was a transplant of the red gristly bit from someone who I think might have died in a motorcycle accident to make an elastic. So the muscle that you would use to hold your eyes open or close them, I effectively didn't have. So they sewed an elastic in there and I taught other muscles to do the job.
Because that's a massive overcoming. And has that shaped your career in any way? Have you ever thought about it?
Look, I don't. You might be overplaying that.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is when I was born, and I don't know if this was connected. My birth didn't go great, and I was really sick as a kid, and they weren't sure if I was going to make it. And I think part of that and part of the eye and everything early on, my mum was encouraged to, she told me this only fairly recently, but was encouraged to do lots and lots of exercises with me of watch the finger, pick it up, focus, concentrate, to try and engage my eyes and the part of the brains that was needed in that sort of stuff. And it's conceivable that some of that spatial awareness and all that might have laid down some railway tracks that helped me mathematically.
Ooh.
Which is interesting. It's a theory that can't really be tested on a sample size of one. But so if anything in my early life and my wonky eye and all that shaped me now, it's possibly more likely to be that
Fascinating.
than the grit required. I think the thing I've noticed with physical maladies, and mine is very minor on the spectrum of them, but I've done a lot of stuff with Red Kite, the kids' cancer charity.
Yes. Yeah.
And you hear of kids who contracted childhood cancer, or the parents who have to live with that, and the situations they're thrown into are just unbelievable, and most of us would not be able to do it for a weekend. But what choice have they got? So they do it. And these kids are unbelievable, and they're tougher than you or I ever think we could be. But to be honest, mate, if you got liver cancer, you'd probably also find that toughness in yourself without diminishing the efforts of the kids. And they've got no choice but to subject themselves to these horrible ordeals of chemo and needles and all that. And I'm not saying it to it's amazing what they do. But when you're put in a situation, you then have to adapt. So I think what I did there was just
Just adapted.
what anyone who had an eye that didn't work but wanted to, keep it open would be taught how to do at such a young age that I wouldn't have pushed back anyway.
Cool, fascinating. Let's jump across to the maths.
Yes.
You speak about maths being beautiful.
Yes,
How
it is.
is that so when so many people's experiences have been different, including myself?
Yeah, but there's a lot of, just because people's experiences of something aren't all that enjoyable, doesn't mean that inside that thing there's not an inherent beauty. I've got better over the last few years, but up until a little while ago, people's experiences of my cooking could be enough to put them off cooking. But well-cooked food is beautiful. And so if unfortunately you weren't taught mathematics all that well, or just didn't get the bug yourself, that doesn't detract from the fact that if taught properly or if understood, even in a superficial way, maths is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything inherently more.
Does it give you your meaning to the world?
Both shapes the way I see the world, and yes, does give meaning to the world. I both, in my order and way of thinking, and the way I try and order the world in my life, sometimes to the stress of others, is very like that, and sometimes possibly a little bit too much like any maths question or equation. I think in real world situations there has to be a perfect or ultimate solution to this, and I'd really like to find it, when other people will be going, dude, chill. And my fiance made a great observation recently that I got really stressed about something quite minor. And she said, what I don't understand about you is you can walk out on stage in front of 2,000 people at a big event you're emceeing with a script and all that that's not quite ready to go and really could fall apart at any minute.
Just riff.
And you'll just walk out and just calmly do it. And if your daughter puts the washing machine on the 1 hour 30 cycle, when you ask for it to go on the 1 hour cycle, that just drives you up the wall and stresses you out because you're going to be a bit behind on when you can bring the washing in before you leave this afternoon. And you tend to really sweat the small stuff sometimes, Adam, which is interesting for how remarkably unflappable you are when some serious shit is going down in broader circumstances.
That's a good observation.
Yeah, and it was a really good observation.
What is the difference to you then between speaking to thousands of people and the one-on-one?
I'm happy to speak one-on-one, but it's more the washing machine example is more that just there was a way I had planned things to roll out.
Yeah.
And I had a very particular plan in my mind, and that plan wasn't followed.
Yeah.
And that really, I feel
But there's no plan on stage either. There's a guide.
Yeah, but I don't know, the stakes are higher, so that's more exciting.
Yeah.
And there are so many, maybe there are so many more things out there that I don't have control over, that I just have to go with. But I'd like to think I can micromanage and control that washing procedure. I've told this story before, but my ex-wife and I don't think this is the reason she's my ex-wife, but we used to go grocery shopping together. And we get 3/4 of the way through the grocery shop, and this is before the scan your own items thing became big. So we get 3/4 of the way through a big shop, and I'd say, you probably only need to get another 6 or 7 things. Yeah, okay. I'll go and start queuing up. So by the time you get back to me, we should be pretty much already being checked out. And she get really stressed. No, just come on, just stay.
Didn't like that.
Yeah, we'll just go. Let's get the other stuff and
then line up.
Go and line up. We go, no, but if we do it that way, It's going to be so much more efficient. This is clearly
Let's hack.
This is clearly the optimal solution to this puzzle,
Yeah.
right? We do that, and occasionally I must admit, I'd almost been entirely checked out, and she still hadn't come back, so I had to shout at her across, But she'd say, no, we can just hang, let's just be together. I'm going, but I don't,
Efficiency is key.
Well, yeah, and I didn't fall in love with you and ask you to marry me because I want to spend heaps of time in the frozen aisle at Coles. I'll sacrifice 5 minutes of being with you now if it gets us out of here 15 minutes earlier, and then at home hanging out, putting all the groceries away or whatever. That used to drive her up the wall.
Wow.
But I can't understand how you wouldn't do it that way.
So you would say you're a highly efficient person?
I like to try and be.
Yeah.
Like there's a way to tie your shoelaces.
A way?
There's a way to tie your shoelaces that shoelaces just from walking come undone. Mm-hmm. There's two different ways, really simple ways you can tie your shoelaces that they won't just unknot.
Wow.
Right? And it's just you just fold the bow in on itself one extra time. Mathematically then, they double, they won't unlock, but you can just pull them apart easily. And when I try and teach my daughters that's the way you should tie your shoes, especially kids playing sport. Make so much, footy boots, here's the way to tie them up so they don't come undone. I can't understand how everyone doesn't do that. My daughters would get so stressed from me trying to teach them a different way to tie their shoelaces. How could you not want to know that? How is that not the optimal solution?
Why would you suffer?
The optimal solution to that puzzle.
Wonderful. So back to the maths. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it true that maths only works because we all agree on it? Like we all agree that 0 is 0, so that's why it works. Is that true?
No.
No.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
So I think what you're asking there...
It's in the mind, right? Maths.
I think an analogous question that you're asking there. Well, there's a couple of things. Mm-hmm. There's a few things in that. First of all, while mathematics is probably the most exact of the sciences, there are certainly very deep questions that mathematicians disagree on. Mm-hmm. Now, some of them are we don't know the answer yet. Others are people think there are two opposing answers, and in theory they can't both be true. They can't both be right. Secondly, we do know that within any mathematical structure or any logical structure where you have rules, we call them axioms, there are going to be things that are true that you cannot prove that they are true within the rules of that system. These systems can't be closed and self-contained. It's one of the most amazing pieces of logical thought by a guy called Gödel back in the 1920s. There are some problems that have been posed in mathematics that we may well never be able to solve. They could still be true, but
we don't have the system.
The tools of the system that created that question are not sufficient to answer it. But third thing to consider is, and this is the thing I think it's closest to your question. So, if we went back and started again with mathematics, thousands of years on, would we have the same mathematics we have now? Or could we come up with a completely different system of mathematics?
Absolutely.
And while there are people who are a lot smarter and a lot more qualified than me who've wrestled over this, as far as I understand, the vast majority of the belief, and I'm in this camp, say, no, there's only one mathematics, and we just come to it. There's a small number of people who think, no, you could have a completely different type of mathematics emerge. So if we met an alien civilization, while they would certainly not speak English as a natural default language or anything like that, their mathematics would be the same.
Wow, that's the consensus.
Yeah, now...
That blows my mind.
They might have discovered some things that we haven't discovered yet, and things like that. And they might use different, but the mathematics would be analogous. Yeah, we would have discovered the same things. And
so it is universal.
Yeah, then. Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why, and there's and there can't be anywhere in the universe where our mathematics doesn't apply, but a different mathematics does.
Interesting. And so,
because think about it, if there was, just say there was another planet where the mathematics was different, and two spaceships are flying towards each other, governed by these different mathematics. Well, when they reach each other, if the aliens come to Earth, does their maths no longer work and they have to adopt ours? Where along the journey would their maths break down and our maths suddenly replace it. That doesn't make any sense to me. So you see, like the Mona Lisa, if Da Vinci hadn't woken up one day and said, "I'm going to sit there, smile for me, I'm going to paint this," the Mona Lisa would never exist. The Mona Lisa's not out there waiting to be painted. But E=mc² for billions of years before Einstein worked out that it did.
It was waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, for everything we have discovered in mathematics, there's massively more that we never will discover. Just say on Earth, just say you found another planet where you'd have evolution, the miracle of life, and you get as far as, say, dogs. Right? Dogs are incredible. It would be fucking amazing if you found a planet where there were things as coherent as dogs. But just say that's as far as it got. Yeah. Well, on that planet, the square root of 81 would still be 9.
Wow.
But no dog's ever going to work that out.
Work it out.
So we've got brains of a certain capacity, and quite an amazing capacity compared to anything else on the planet, it seems. There's no reason why we'll ever work out all of mathematics. So the search for physical laws that govern the universe, is there a single set of laws that just run everything? I think there probably is.
Is that because it's birthed out of nature? Is it true that because moons have cycles? But isn't it our perception then? Because if it came out of people counting moons, then you'd have to be on Earth to be...
If what came out of counting moons?
Farming? Is that where...
I think farming came out of people dying because they didn't have food.
Yeah, but So there's no correlation between counting the sun going up and down and moons going around and mathematics and the birth of mathematics? No.
No, if you're on a different planet and the year was longer, for example, you still count and you still have numbers. Now the year's longer, but that's not relevant.
It wouldn't change it.
No, it wouldn't. No, you're on a different planet, and your year's longer. Then the sort of foods you grow and all that may well be different, but that's determined by the biology and the environment that you're in. For example, a better way to look at it might be this: that we count in groups of 10, right? 10, 20, 10 tens are 100, 10 of those are 1,000, and off you go. But there are some mathematical systems that are in a different base. So the hours for the day are in base 12. So 12 hours in a day, 24, and after that you just start going around again and again. You could have an entire mathematical system done on base 12. So just say after you got to the number 10, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, potato, apple. That gets you up to 12. Then you go 13, 14, 15, 17, 20, 20 potato, 20 apple, and you keep going. On the face of it, the mathematics you get looks slightly different. But if you just turn all the base 12 into base 10, the mathematics is exactly the same.
Wow.
That underpins it. So it might have some superficial differences to it, but there's only one giant canonical mathematics out there waiting for us to slowly stumble into.
Yes, so on this basis that things are waiting to be discovered, there is in fact many more systems to be discovered, you think?
No, there's only one system.
There's only one system.
And we'll never know all of it.
No.
But how far we can push that system is the great
question
of mathematics.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in one of your interviews, you say that maths will build the 21st century with the health industry, cancer research, programming and technology.
Yep.
Do you think that artificial intelligence will be integral to this?
Already is.
Already is.
Yep. In minor amounts, but yeah, artificial intelligence will be one of the great achievements and experiments, and hopefully not failures, of this century.
And it'll be groundbreaking in solving problems?
Oh, in solving in both helping humans do what we already do or can do massively faster, safer, more efficiently, cheaply, and allowing us to do things that humans will never be able to do.
Wow.
I mean, just, the example I love to give from the beautiful game of chess. So back in 1985, Garry Kasparov, the world's greatest chess player, plays 32 chess computers at the same time. Just walking around a table playing 32 games at once. They're the 32 best computers in the world for chess at the time. He beats them 32-0. There's one position in one game where he has to think a bit because it's a little bit complicated. Everything else is just destroys them. 12 years later, the same Garry Kasparov as world champion loses to a single computer.
Yep.
First world champion to lose to a computer. 12, 15 years later, I download on my phone an app that will defeat any chess player who ever lives. There's
An app on your phone can already do
oh
that.
yeah, you rate chess players numerically like you do with tennis players and all that, tennis rankings. Mm-hmm. The very best human players played about 2,800, 2,850. I played about 1,500, maybe. App on my phone plays at 32, 3,300. No human will ever break 3,000.
Isn't that a bit concerning?
So we download. So well, then the next concerning bit is, and that's just an app.
Exactly.
Some people at a program called DeepMind in the UK design a neural network that teaches itself just by repetition. They teach it the rules of chess. They don't show it any previous games. They give it no instruction. They don't give it any strategy. They teach it the rules of chess. It goes away and in 4 hours plays almost 5 million games against parallel versions of itself and is better than the world's best dedicated chess playing program within 5 hours. So that's artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? So if you look at that in the space of 30 years, 40 years, you've gone from a human can beat all the best machines in the world at the same time to a machine is teaching itself in a couple of hours to be better than any human being will ever conceivably be. You're going to get that at much greater scale across everything.
So what's your thoughts on that? Don't you think there's some ethical dilemmas that we face?
So thoughts are, first of all, it's unavoidable. Mm-hmm. So you can't run away from it and say, let's just all agree not to do this. Secondly, there's maybe you could argue there's two broad families of issues. One of how do you guard against bad actors? How do you guard against people doing wrong with those things? And that's really challenging because the incentive for bad actors to comply to the rules and behave well are less than they are for. So one of the concerns about AIs running rogue and not having security around them is that something like the Commonwealth Bank in Australia or big hospital or whatever is designing a system, you can assume they're going to try their hardest to also make it safe. If you're a renegade criminal organisation and you're designing an AI just to try and rip off large amounts of money from banks, you're probably just trying to get it done as quickly as possible and you're not as worried about the safeguards. They're the sort of AIs you could argue could conceivably run rogue a bit more quickly. And the second issue is AIs that are done by people who only want to be good and do the right thing but haven't thought about them well enough. And so systems that are biased. So there's a famous case in the United States of a program that, from what I understand of it, you put in I'm a judge, I found you guilty, I put in all the data I've got about you, and this thing recommends a sentence to me. And from the stories I've heard, that program, you look back over the last 500 sentences it gave, and if two people were exactly the same in the way they presented before the court, age, background, previous record, etc., one was African American, one was Anglo, the African American was getting nailed with a much harder sentence.
Yes.
There's some sort of bias has been accidentally baked into that machine.
Because we are its parents, essentially.
You get facial recognition programs that just weren't shown any Asian people when they were training to learn the difference between a face and a frying pan and a dog or whatever, and they just thought all the Asian people were blinking.
Did you hear about the Twitter account and the AI they gave that account to?
And that one that became a Nazi.
Yes.
And that was
by the end of the day.
Yeah, and that was because humans were deliberately saying nasty things to it.
Oh, right.
And pushing it in that direction. But so those things are concerning, but also if done properly, the sort of fiendish problems we'll solve in all areas of the sciences and things like that will be...
Because it's going beyond a mathematical equation. It's not just programming anymore. It's doing things that the programmers don't understand. And
it will be interesting to see how much of it is stuff that we can eventually understand and can be explained back to us. And so it's fascinating in that chess example now, they've had this algorithm playing incredible games of chess, clearly using strategies that humans wouldn't do. Humans are just not thinking that's the way to sacrifice those pieces and like little things, but the deep mind, HI, this A1, H1, H8, we break up chess squares by letters and numbers, and deep mind just goes crazy with the H pawn, just charges it down and bashes away in a way that all human intuition tells you, oh, you probably don't want to do that, and wins games. So now watching the best human players look back at these games and try and work out what's going on, and will that teach us strategies we can incorporate into human play, or will it always just be, I just can't see why they're doing that. Eventually it makes sense, but it's just too hard and won't make us adopt our actions. Who knows?
Wow, fascinating, hey?
This is just a typical interview on Coast Community News, yeah? You're always talking AI and whether there's a singular mathematics or a canonical...
I do like diving into the philosophies of things.
Excellent.
So I'd like to circle back now to comedy.
Whoa.
It seems
I thought we were doing comedy.
Well, yeah, true. But you obviously have both sides of your brain, the analytical and the creative, and a nice
Interesting
harmony.
on that.
Yep.
My limited understanding based on a couple of podcasts I've heard is also that whole idea of left brain, right brain, one bit's whichever one, I can't remember which is meant to be which. One's cranking out mathematical equations, the other one's writing poetry, is from what I understand, very overblown.
True.
And you really just, your brain's your brain. There are some functions that are clearly defined into the left and right brain, but nowhere, as far as I understand, I have to track that. There was a really interesting podcast I listened to once, so I should listen to it again. From what I understand, it's massively over. Like the whole idea that we only use 10% of our brain, that's
true.
bullshit. Yeah,
Interesting.
That's telemarketing.
Interesting
Stuff.
I know that we have a corpus callosum, which
corpus
is
callosum,
which is
joins the left and the right brain,
and it's
thicker in women than men.
And for creativity, the thicker it is the more creative you are. That's what I've heard.
Well, if that's the case, then it suggests you need both sides of your brain for creativity, and it's, of course, corpus callosum's ability to jump around between the two of them. Yeah, mate, and the great thing, we know so little about the brain.
Yeah, I know.
So much more than we did recently, but so little. I love it.
It's exciting. So
back to comedy.
What do you love about comedy? You gave us a little hint at the start.
Yeah, what is there not to love? I think laughing is a natural, well, for almost all people, a very natural human state, very relaxing human state. And whether the ability to make other people laugh or the ability to laugh yourself is something really, it's just a pleasant, endorphin releasing experience. And I also like the complexity and the structure within really good comedy. I like as well. I love with my kids. My younger daughter loves Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the TV show. It's a very funny show, well written, but watching them come to understand certain. Do you get why that joke's funny? And explaining them. I'll often, and this irritates them, but I'll often stop the show 3 minutes in and go, okay, so this is a standard 28-minute comedy piece. There's going to be an A, B, and C storyline. What are the three storylines we've seen so far? Oh, yeah, okay, Jake's lost his jacket. Yeah. Terry's angry because someone's taken his food. Right, the boss has got a big presentation coming up. Excellent. Which one do you think is going to be the biggest one? Watch the pacing of them. See how we're jumping around between the three. So my old mucker, Will Anderson, who I did some radio with, who might consider himself the least mathematical person of all time. That was certainly the shtick we used to work on the radio. But you watch the way those people put together an hour of comedy. It's not necessarily mathematical, it's quite algorithmic. Establish some ideas, certain pacing, don't make this bit too long, plant a joke here, reveal, call back the answer to the joke here. Not just here, not a minute later. Call back should be 25 to 30 minutes later, after which you can jump off to this and that, wrap a bow around it. That's creative.
Sure.
But there's a mathematical and sort of algorithmic framework that's being applied to that without any doubt at all.
Interesting. To my understanding, comedy is about pushing the edges and crossing lines, and I think it's quite fascinating how in different cultures there's going to be different lines that are crossed. I've observed that watching English comedy and American comedy is different on the culture basis, that America requires more shock factor. Would you agree? And English doesn't need as much because perhaps their society is perceived as more reserved, so they need to do less to create more of a reaction. Have you thought about this?
Yeah, I've heard similar said before. I'd say a few things. Certainly comedy can cross lines, and that form of comedy can be, you know, rewarding or challenging in that whole, well, I don't really know if I should be laughing at this, or gee, that's a bit rude and common, but I find it quite funny. But there's a lot of comedy that doesn't. You know, this stuff can still be quite funny without running. And I've got no trouble with comedy that offends people, but comedy doesn't have. You know, there's certainly also rich veins of comedy that don't really, you know, really good slapstick comedy or whatever doesn't have to offend anyone really. I think the defining aspect of comedy is that even the defining? The vast bulk of stuff that's funny is funny because there's a moment where it's unpredictable, I think.
But that's kind of what I mean about a line, not necessarily offending, but
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, no, it's more that
Yeah.
your mind is going down a certain path and then it gets flipped on you. Yeah, at the same time, there are jokes that you still laugh at when you see them coming a mile off, and well-delivered slapstick and things like that. You can just see it happening and it's still funny regardless. I don't think all comedy has to be like that, but a lot of comedy. So it's that famous, you know, the comedy of threes. So, you know, an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman walk into a pub, or a dentist, a doctor, and a chiropractor walk into a pub, and the first person does something, and the second person does the same thing, establishing in your mind an assumption the third person will do the same thing. The third person does something different, you go, oh, there you go.
Maths.
Hey, it's purely, because think about it. If you said...
It's all patterns.
If you said an Englishman, a Scotsman, a Dutchman, a Greek, and then walked into a pub. The first person does this. The second person does the same thing. The third person does the same thing. The fourth person does the same thing. The fifth person does the same thing. As the person in the joke, you're going, oh, fuck off. I'm over this. It's, you know, you don't need to establish that.
Yeah.
If instead you walk in and say, Englishman and a Scotsman walk into the pub. The Englishman does something. The Scotsman does something different. You go, well, that's, yeah, okay. I guess it is conceivable people would do. You need that second one to reinforce in your mind, this is the only conceivable way anyone would operate in this, or act in this circumstance. Oh, that was funny when the third one flips it. So, you know, there is a certain mathematical structure that underpins that, no doubt at all. And then the construction of longer form, you know, comedy narratives and things like that certainly have
these pick-up moments and these bounce.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so analytical on that now.
No, it's really, if there's what's a TV comedy that you like watching?
Oh, I haven't watched something in a while. Well, Black Books. Let's go.
Right, Black Books. And I haven't watched much of Black Books, but I would think almost certainly stop any episode you're watching 4 minutes in. Certainly, your ensemble comedies like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Superstore or Cheers or whatever.
Haven't heard of any of these.
You haven't heard of Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I don't watch things.
Clearly, no.
I just literally...
You haven't heard of Superstore?
No.
You haven't watched Netflix in the last 2 years.
I don't watch
because
Netflix.
Every time you turn... even if that TV turns itself on sometimes by itself and recommends Superstore.
Maybe you need to recommend me some things because I get overwhelmed
just
by
did.
the choice.
No.
Cheers? What was it?
Cheers is old, but very funny. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you'll love. The first few episodes takes a while to get in. You've just got to get used to the characters. Schitt's Creek, SCH, Schitt's Creek.
Okay.
Funniest thing that's been on TV in a long time. The Good Place. But with most of those things, with most of those shows, stop them 4 minutes in and have a look and go, what are the three storylines that are the A, B, and C storyline that are, and you'll realise that for all the beautiful dynamic difference of comedy, there are a few fundamental structures that underpin not every single thing, but a really significant percentage of them.
Okay, I'll pay attention to that. So, to end on that, what kind of comedy do you think we need now? With all the craziness in the world, what do we need?
Oh, look, I think there's room for all sorts. Probably a time now where a bit more optimistic comedy would be good. You know, running people into the ground and punching down at people's expense and all that, whatever those phrases mean. There's probably no need for any of that at the moment.
Yeah, let's uplift everyone.
Yeah, why not, huh? It's enough things to laugh about that can also make you feel fairly happy with the world.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about what you're working on at the moment. Is there anything you'd like to share? You're releasing a book soon? Let's Let's talk about what you're working on at the moment.
Oh, sure.
Go on.
Well, now that you mention it, I have a copy here of Adam Spencer's Maths 101. This is a practical handbook for parents to teach their primary school age kids mathematics.
Oh, wow, fascinating.
Everything
Curly
from the
maths
real
questions your primary school kid will ask you with the answer.
with the answers, all the way back to even before your kids go to school. Interesting observation. A lot of the example I give in the book, the hypothetical example is if you and I have kids, and on the first day of school, your little Michaela's walking in there and she can count to 20, and my little Ophelia's walking in there and she can count to 100. Everyone's going to automatically go, wow, Adam's daughter's just so much better at maths than Els. I mean, she can count further. Now, there may well be a correlation there, but in fact, and I'm not in any way trying to get people to hothouse kids or anything like that, but if you want to get your even pre-school aged child thinking mathematically, there are much better things to do than just teach them after 30 comes 40, then 50, then 60, and just pushing the counting. There are little games with, coins on a table. How many in that pile? Which two piles do we put together to have the same number as this pile? That sort of spatial and assigning numbers to images and creative thinking is probably laying down far more important pathways for a kid than just belting into them that after 39 comes 40 and after 49 comes 50. They'll learn that. Everyone learns that eventually, but there are more interesting things you can do there. All the way through to the very end of year 6, probably some stuff that's leading into high school, and there's extension stuff in there too. So a lot of it's aimed at kids and parents who are, need to work on the basics, but there's also stuff there for kids who are really getting it and racing ahead.
I guess a lot of parents would have that anxiety.
Completely.
Their child comes home and they haven't thought about maths in 20 years.
The book came from a mate of mine who a few years ago sent me a text message saying, Adam, Teddy, 7, just asked me, Dad, why isn't 1 a prime number? I've locked myself in the bathroom. I can't stall him much longer. What should I say? Mate, great question.
I love it. And then thus the book was
blah,
born.
blah, blah, blah. Tell him this, show him that. Thanks, buddy. And off he went.
Incredible. So where can people find this?
That's a really good question, El.
What
People
is it?
can pre-order this on Booktopia right now. If you go to Booktopia and look for the Adam Spencer page at Booktopia, you can place a pre-order, and it'll be in all good bookstores, big online things like Booktopia, or your beautiful little corner stores, things like Bookface, there in Erina Fair, from the early December.
Are you going to have an opening on the coast with you there talking to people?
I should do that, shouldn't I?
You should. You can sign some copies, tell a joke.
I'd love
be
signing
there.
copies of my book, mate. Don't you worry about that. I sign every book. Once this is not the first book I've written, and once it's out there, every bookstore I go past, I'll pop in for a couple of seconds and sign them. So then they move them right up in the front of the store.
Hey.
Free advertising for the Spence. Love it.
Cheeky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's me.
So finally, Central Coast. How come you're here and why do you love it?
So my ex-wife had some family up here, and so we knew the area, and I'd always promised her and my kids that when breakfast radio finished, which placed a lot of demands on me, but also quite some imposts on the family in terms of how late at night the kids could be noisy and things like that we'd go and do something different and fun, and this was always the plan. So I moved up here at the end of 2014, going into 2015. When I'd finished on breakfast radio. I finished on radio at the end of 2013, so we came up here at the end of 2014, and I've been up here ever since, and I love it.
You love it. But why do you love it?
How could you not? I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's a beautiful part of the world. Not far away from the CBD when I have to go down there for work, but far enough away that you do feel like you're far away.
What would you like to see more of here in terms of cultural aspects?
It's a good question, because I'm lucky in that the time I spend between the two, I can get as much of a fix of anything I need that's only available in the CBD many times a week. I never really went to Lizottes, the music, and there was a Lizottes here, as well as the one in Newcastle, which was a live music venue, and it shut down not long after we moved up here, so I never really got there. Wouldn't mind a place for where there was some good quality live music, that wasn't just, no disrespect to cover bands in big pub courtyards and things like that, But a bit of that would probably be very enabling for the community.
We hear that a lot. There's definitely a gap. So hopefully I've interviewed enough people and enough people have said that.
Exactly.
So hopefully someone's going to pick
If
up on
Coast
it.
Community News can't get it done.
Who can?
Exactly.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me today.
Absolute pleasure.
Adam.
We might have gone slightly over the 20 minutes.
Oh, I know, but it was too interesting, you know? I just wanted to
Exactly.
keep probing.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Absolutely no trouble. Bye, my ball.